And welcome to this edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mireles, and I am your host here in Harlingen, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley of deep South Texas. We got a jam-packed program lined up for you today. In just a little while, our South Texas correspondent Sandra Sanchez is going to be joining us with some new reporting on some pretty disturbing, to be frank with you, new reporting on the unaccompanied migrant children that are being sent here to the Rio Grande Valley. So we're going to check in with her in just a little bit and see what the reaction is from a group of lawyers that represent children like this in the immigration court system. And after the break, we're going to talk to our El Paso correspondent, Julian Resendiz, on his new reporting on Mexico saying they are ready to pay up on their water debt thanks to President Trump telling them that he's going to start tariffing them a little bit more. So we'll get to that in just a little bit. But as always, let's go ahead and start by taking a look at what's trending across the border, starting with a controversial sign and scene inside the nativity scene at a Boston area church is getting lots of attention. The display outside of St. Susanna's Parish has an anti-ICE message where traditionally Jesus, Mary, and Joseph would normally be. The nativity suggests the Holy Family were detained by ICE. Despite pressure from the Archdiocese of Boston to remove the sign, saying it goes against norms around sacred objects, Father Stephen Hosoma says kept the ICE was here sign in place.
If the circus continues, take it down. We don't want this to be an ongoing. We're just making a statement. I think we got our message out.
Now, the father says he wants the Archbishop of Boston to speak with the Archbishop of Boston, before deciding the next steps. Now, in a statement, ICE said the actions of the activist Reverend Stephen Hosoma are absolutely abhorrent and add to a dangerous narrative responsible for a more than 1,000% increase in assaults on ICE officers. In Illinois this morning, their governor, J.B. Pritzker, signed legislation to protect migrants from unjust federal immigration enforcement actions. Thousands of people were arrested and detained by ICE and Border Patrol agents during the 2.5 months of heightened enforcement action the Trump administration named Operation Midway Blitz. Pritzker said the set of bills he's signing into law Tuesday will expand legal protections for the people of Illinois. During the operation, ICE raids in certain Chicago area neighborhoods had federal agents deploy tear gas. Homeland Security said more than 800 people were detained during those operations. And 3 New York congressional leaders said Monday that more immigrants are skipping court appointments out of fear of getting deported by masked ICE agents roaming the halls of a federal building in New York City. Now, we brought you a story similar to this out of San Diego. Our San Diego correspondent Salvador Rivera spoke to a man whose wife, originally from Norway, was detained while she was inside the immigration court hearing. But here in this incident, so Congressman Adriano Espaillat, along with Democrats Nydia Velázquez and Dan Goldman, are setting up a rotation to more frequently observe the court and allow immigrants to show up with relatively more confidence that they won't be arrested by ICE. Advocates said that when federal lawmakers are present, it makes a huge difference. They say agents do not flagrantly violate the law in front of those lawmakers. Time now to bring in our South Texas correspondent, Sandra Sanchez, on the new reporting she has on these unaccompanied migrant children being sent to detention centers here in the Rio Grande Valley. What can you tell us?
Yeah, Rudy, it's kind of shocking information. Bombshell was dropped on us during a media call just a couple hours ago. The South Texas Pro Bono Asylum Representation Project at the American Bar Association, also known as ProBar. Its director, Laura Pena, came out in a conversation talking about the needs for legal representation of migrants and said that unaccompanied migrant children who are detained and arrested elsewhere in the country are now being sent here to the Rio Grande Valley of South Texas. About 10%, about 50 children so far, have recently been brought here, put in facilities which are under the Office of Refugee Resettlement, which is under the Department of Homeland Health and Human Services, not the Department of Homeland Security. The Department of Health and Human Services is a completely different agency that oversees the children. And they are being held here with the idea of sending them back to their home countries for deportation. There are right now about 500 unaccompanied children here in the Rio Grande Valley, and that's a significant percentage of the estimated 2,000 children in this category who are nationwide. So, we're hearing this for the first time. And they are part of organizations that are trying to legally represent these children. They have 12 children right now that they are representing to try to fight deportation. One child was already deported, so they have 11 still in country. We do have a sound from her talking just a little bit ago. Again, this is Laura Peña of ProBar.
We understand it's a pilot program here in the Rio Grande Valley, and that 4 ORR shelters are essentially holding children until their removal flight is scheduled. And so far to date, we have worked with and now represent, we've encountered 12 children in that scenario. And we represent, I believe, 11 of them because one of them was already removed. And so that is a new policy. Right now in OR custody, there's a little over 2,000, at least the most recent data is from October. In our region, right now, there's about 500. So we believe, separate from that voluntary return program, we're starting to see an uptick of children from other parts of the country being detained here on the border, and that is new. And it's going to increase, I believe, in the coming years, because there's a lot of beds here in the Rio Grande Valley. There's the militarization of the border for many years. So there's a lot of detention capacity for children here. And what we're seeing, even though it's maybe 40 to 50 kids here from other parts of the country, that number is going to go up. And it's extremely concerning.
So do we know where exactly here in the Rio Grande Valley that these kids are being detained? Because we used to have an organization here called Southwest Key that was kind of in charge of, watching over these children, these unaccompanied migrant minors. That company is no longer existent here in the valley,
right.
And all their locations that they had across the valley are closed down. So where are these kids being held?
Yeah, actually, we don't know. And this has always been a problem. Whenever we ask for information from Health and Human Services about minor children, we don't get it because they are protected. That information is not shared with reporters. We don't know where they're being held, but they are being held. And organizations like ProBar are doing their best to try to represent them. The reason that this came about was they were touting a new online fundraising. It's called Defend Our Neighbors Fund, and it's a collaborative with United We Dream and some other nonprofit organizations to provide pro bono legal representation. So far, they've raised $12.4 million. This comes after the Trump administration a few months ago discontinued funds for legal services specifically for children like this that used to be paid for. Now, under the way our government system is set up in immigration courts, immigrants have the right to hire a lawyer, but they are not provided one. And so many of these organizations were receiving some funds when it comes to children because people said, how can a 2-year-old represent him or herself in court? But the Trump administration rescinded those funds. As you know, we talked about it a few times. And so they were touting this fund that they've raised, and people are coming out. A link to that will be on borderreport.com. But, we want to know where are these children being kept? And if anyone has information, can email us at staff@borderreport.com because we'd love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, we would appreciate it if you know where any of these children are being kept. If you've seen any kind of transportation. Usually they move them in buses that are very nondescript. They look like charter buses or maybe a little bit smaller.
Years ago, there were several children who were kept on the top couple floors of a hotel in McAllen. And the way we found out was they had signs that they put on the windows that were saying, I've been held here for 14 days, free me, let me out. And we all gathered beneath this hotel with long lenses and figured out where they were. That was several years ago. But this is new, and so we want to stay on top of it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your reporting on this, Sandra. We look forward to what as this story develops, your coverage of it. So we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, El Paso correspondent Julian Resendiz is going to join us to talk about another topic that affects not just South Texas, but how you put food on the table as well. And we're talking about the water debt that Mexico owes the United States. So stay with us. Border Report Live is back in 2 minutes. Welcome back to this edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mireles, and I am your host here in Harlingen, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley of Deep South Texas. Our next subject for this edition of Border Report Live is something that affects us all, despite the main impact happening here in Deep South Texas and all along the border, all the way up to El Paso. And we are talking about Mexico's water debt owed to the United States. They still owe the United States about 800,000 acre feet of water, and that has had a major impact. Here locally, we actually saw the state's only sugar mill close down after many, many decades of doing that work that puts sugar on tables across America. So now we wanted to bring in our El Paso correspondent, Julian Resendiz, on some new reporting that says we may start getting some of that water back. Hey, how you doing, Julian?
Really good to be back, and you're absolutely right. As we speak, high-level Mexican and U.S. officials are meeting online to discuss the water debt. And the catalyst for this was that yesterday, President Trump said enough. So he posted on social media that he was going to impose an additional 5% tariff on Mexico if it did not release water to the U.S. By December 31st. We got to remember that Mexico is already facing a 25% tariff on any product that is not covered by the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement, the so-called free trade agreement. So that's already a burden that Mexico has to face. This 5% additional tariff would hit the Mexican economy hard at a time that the Mexican economy is struggling to come up for money for all the social programs that President Claudia Sheinbaum has started. What we know is this, Rudy. As of today, the Mexican delegation is going to make the case, okay, we understand, we get it. Give us some time to make the payments. President Trump yesterday said on social media, I want 200,000 acre feet of water by December 31st. The Mexicans this morning said, wait a minute, we may not have that amount of water, but we can certainly accelerate our payments, and we can continue those payments through January, February, and March, if that's okay with you. So those are some of the things that are being discussed probably right now as we speak in that binational meeting that is taking place right now online between Mexico City and Washington.
Now, you just mentioned there that the president, he said he wanted a certain amount by a certain time, but can Mexico, even if, let's say, they could make that or can't make that, could they make it, or is it something that they just don't have either? Is the water problem, water shortage an issue they're facing as well?
I think the big question, Rudy, on the U.S. side of the border is why has Mexico not paid the water that it owes? And Mexico's position has been, hey, we've been in a severe drought the past few years. But then what we have is a situation in which Mexico this year, when President Trump came into office, started to accelerate those payments. The explanation we heard this morning is, okay, so we got some rain this year. So what they are saying now is, even though we got some rain this year, and then show the chart, if we can show the chart, we have accelerated some of those payments. Right there on your screen, you see that Mexico hardly paid any water the first 4 years of the cycle. And then on the extreme right, you see just a very, very steep increase in the water payments. So Trump's position is, okay, you were able to do this, keep it going. Turn in that water for now. This morning, the Mexican National Water Commission top official, he said, well, first of all, yes, we had some more water this year, but our reservoirs are still low. He mentioned specifically 3 reservoirs in the state of Chihuahua, which usually hold much of the water that is turned into the U.S. He said those reservoirs are low. Even if we wanted to, we can't give you all the water that you want. But let's talk. And then the President Sheinbaum, she said, okay, there's also the matter that I need water to supply my cities. I need water to irrigate my crops so that the Mexican people can have some food on the table. I do believe we have a clip of Sheinbaum, if we can play it now.
Tomar en cuenta de aquí al 31 de diciembre cuánta agua se puede aportar.
We have to determine how much water we can deliver by December 31st, taking into consideration how much water we have. In any case, we can continue to make deliveries through 2026. What are our priorities? Obviously, that our people don't run out of water, that our farmers have water for irrigation, and also that Texas farmers who are demanding this water can also have water. We need to reach an understanding. We need to coordinate. It is not a matter of ill will. It's not Mexico saying, we don't want to give you water. We want to comply with the treaty, but taking into account the current conditions.
Rudy, is that we might have some breaking news later today as far as Mexico turning over some water to the U.S. And this came, again, because President Trump took a hard line and said, enough. There's the tariffs if you don't turn in the water. We should know by later this afternoon what's going to happen, and hopefully it's some good news for South Texas farmers.
Yeah, hopefully. Again, it's something that we've seen over the last 5 to 10 years here in the Rio Grande Valley become a more dire situation with every year that passes. I mentioned that sugar mill that closed down. But, speaking of the economic impacts of that, a 5% additional tariff on top of the 25% tariffs, how badly would that extra 5% of tariffs hurt the Mexican economy?
It would hurt the Mexican economy in any product that is not covered by the U.S. Mexico-Canada agreement. And that agreement primarily covers manufactured goods, such as the ones produced at the maquiladoras on the border, as well as some agricultural exports, like the avocados, the lemons, that are very popular in the U.S. But everything else, in theory, would be susceptible to these tariffs. And like I mentioned, it's not so much the 25 and the 5%, bringing it up to 30%. It's also that the Mexican economy, as we have reported earlier this year, is not in really good shape. And that has to do with all this social spending that this new Sheinbaum administration has affected. There's about 30 million people, mostly older adults, women, and some disabled, as well as young people, who are receiving cash payments that are coming from Mexican coffers. So it's quite a balancing act that the Mexican government has to do. So the tariffs right now, it's a worst possible case scenario for them.
Speaking of the USMCA, we've talked about how it's it's kind of in a renegotiation phase at the moment. The president saying that he wants a more fair negotiation going forward on that USMCA that he negotiated during his first term in office. Do you foresee something like water payments being met, kind of sneaking into that USMCA agreement?
That is a real possibility, and that's something that has already been discussed. I know that Mexico is pretty much preparing for that to be part of the negotiations. However, they go back on international law. They call on international law and on international precedent to say, wait, there's a treaty in place. Why are we bringing this treaty into a new negotiation? If anything, let's talk about renegotiating the water treaty. But definitely, that's something that President Trump will bring on the table. Whether or not Mexico will go along with it depends on several factors, and we will see that later this coming year.
And let me ask you this question, going back to that water treaty, has there been any discussion about a renegotiation of that water treaty? I mean, it's from, I believe, 1941. Lots have changed. We're talking about, climate change, whether you believe in it or how you believe it happens. Put that aside. It's the reality of the situation. Drought is becoming more of a normalcy here in South Texas and in parts of Mexico and across the whole Southwest United States. So has there been any talk about renegotiating that water treaty?
There has been discussion on both sides of the border to incorporate climate change as well as other factors into the treaty. However, this morning, President Sheinbaum said, hey, this 1944 treaty is a good treaty for Mexico. We need to keep it. We just need to find better ways to comply with it.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Julian. We appreciate your reporting like this. And for those of you at home that are interested in more on this, just stand by on borderreport.com. Keep clicking that refresh button. I'm sure Julian will have something up, that breaking news on what's going to happen next with this water debt and Mexico's attempt to pay it off in the coming weeks. All right. Thank you so much, Julian. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
All right. Stay with us. Border Report Live is back in 2 minutes. And welcome back to borderreport.com. Going back to some headlines now for you, one of them being the New World screwworm. Now, we've talked about this on the program before. It's a flesh-eating maggot, and it is closing in on the Texas border. Now, according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the New World screwworm is an invasive species that burrows fly larvae into fresh wounds of living animals like livestock, and the damage they cause can be deadly. So last month, the USDA announced that the screwworm was spotted just 70 miles from the U.S.-Mexico border. Texas Department of Agriculture Commissioner Sid Miller said it's 70 miles from Laredo. It's at our back door. Here in the Rio Grande Valley, Edinburgh, Texas, to be specific, the USDA has made a facility that they hope will help them fight the screwworm before it makes its way to the border. Well, now in Chiapas, the Mexican state of Chiapas, Mexico is doing the same thing. El Sol de Mexico is reporting that Mexico is working to accelerate the construction of a plant to produce infertile flies to control the spread of New World screwworm. President Claudia Sheinbaum said that it's one of the demands of the United States government to resume the import of Mexican cattle to her country. That's something we've also reported here on borderreport.com. We have stopped importing cattle for the time being. Now, she said she met with officials to find a way to speed up the construction of the Mediterranean fly breeding and sterilization plant as well. So we're going to stay on top of this. Again, this plant would be located in Chiapas, Mexico, which if you were on Border Report Live last week, we talked to the organization Doctors Without Borders, who are stationed in Tapachula, Chiapas, Mexico, which is right on the border of Guatemala. If this were to work out, this would be something that could benefit us here in the United States as well, because those screwworms are actually coming from south of Mexico, from those Central and Southern American countries. So we'll stay on top of this for you and keep you updated. Now, the International Boundary and Water Commission has acknowledged that its heavily criticized $2.5 million nanobubble project in the Tijuana River was destroyed and swept away during a recent storm. Our Salvador Rivera tells us more about the controversial technology.
Placed into the water. The theory was that they would help break up the contamination before it was released into the air we all breathe. But during a recent storm, this very expensive equipment used to make the nanobubbles was destroyed, washed away by the currents. Bubbles, much smaller than these, were supposed to be pumped into portions of the Tijuana River. The International Boundary and Water Commission gave an Ohio company $2.5 million to set up a system here.
We know the intention was to treat the sewage and the sewage gases that are causing the odor impacts and causing the air impacts, but they didn't look at the other potential unintended consequences.
Philip Masigas is the executive director with San Diego Coastkeeper, which has had concerns with the nanobubble project from the start.
IBWC didn't do a lot of testing of what actually would be released into the air once this system was running, what are called disinfection byproducts, which can have other environmental impacts. Our other concern is the entire point of this proposal, of this project, was to treat the water here at Saturn Boulevard, here at this pollution public health hotspot, and they never deployed the system here.
Masigas says when the system was deployed, it was swept away by the river during a storm, calling it a waste of money. According to IBWC, it was able to conduct a small-scale project before the storm destroyed the equipment, saying preliminary results show promise in reducing odors and bacteria.
If they release the data to the public, we'll certainly look at it. I think the intention was good to try and reduce the sewer gases that are causing all these health impacts, but the execution was pretty poor, and they allowed it to be destroyed under really ridiculous circumstances.
Salvador Rivera, Border Report.
All right. Thank you so much for your reporting on that, Salvador. That is going to do it for us today. For Salvador Rivera in San Diego, Julian Resendiz in El Paso, Texas, and Sandra Sanchez here in Harlingen, Texas, in South Texas. My name is Rudy Midas. We'll see you all next time.